my name is Thomas O'Regan. I'm a professional property investor here in Australia. Now, most people in Australia these days, as far as I can see, buy cars on car loans. And from a professional investor's standpoint, is quite literally one of the fucking dumbest things you can do if you ever want to be financially free or you ever want to get to a point where you're wealthy in terms of, being able to retire or having a home paid outright or having income generating, passive income generation that you don't need to work for. Now, let me just dive into this example that I wanted to do, which is if you chose to buy a car with a car loan versus if you chose to buy a property. Now, I want to dive into the actual opportunity cost that is occurring when you choose at a young age in your 20s or early 30s to buy a car loan or buy a car with a car loan versus buying a property. Okay, so let's just do the example of you're in Australia, or it doesn't matter where you are, but say for example you're in Australia, you have 50 grand and you want to buy a Land Cruiser and the Land Cruiser is 100 grand. So you're going to need to get a 50 grand loan. And what is the cost of that? So the cost of that 50 grand loan, so just to be very clear, the example here is you're buying a 50 grand loan, you're buying a $100,000 Land Cruiser and you're going to get a $50,000 loan on it and you've got to pay 50 grand cash. And why 50 grand cash? Because you could buy a property if you had 50 grand cash. So that's how we're going to relate it to the end net result of buying property versus buying a car. Now, buy the car with a 50 grand loan. If you had a 12% interest on that loan, on that car loan for $50,000 to drive around your Land Cruiser, it would cost you $500 per month. Now, $500 per month is a cost you incur, which you are getting absolutely no revenue or growth or appreciation for that outlay. Okay? In actual fact, the car that you buy in most circumstances is going to go down in value, and at very best it is going to hold its value. And when I say hold its value, I mean you're going to put a load of money into it on repairs, maintenance, and all the other costs of holding that car, new engine, new X, new Y, new Z, so many new things. And by the time you've done all that, 10 years later, maybe it's worth the same amount of money that you paid for it, but you've probably put about 50 grand into keeping it to that standard. Now, I had a little bit of a rant there, but basically the point is you're getting a car on a car loan and you're spending $50,000 on it cash, you're getting a $50,000 loan and it's costing you $500 per month. Now let's flip that and go, how's that going to look in 10 years? Well, maybe the car's worth 100 grand in 10 years and maybe you've still got a loan on it, maybe you haven't, but let's just say you paid out the loan, paying $500 per month for the last 10 years. Great, you've got a $100,000 car and it's cost you $500 a month for that entire 10-year period. What is the difference if you were to instead buy a property? Now, if you were to buy a property, spend $50,000, and I'll just stop here. Yes, you can buy properties with $50,000. Just to be clear, I'm buying properties with $50,000 every single week, okay? Either me or friends that I'm helping to buy them every single week. So you spend the $50,000, you buy a property that's worth $300,000, for example, and that property goes from $300,000 in the first year to year 10, $600,000. Now, what is the difference there? The difference is the property you put $50,000 of your own money into it. You're generating rental income from owning it. So the mortgage or the loan repayments are paid for by the rental income, meaning it's not costing you any money out of your own pocket on an annual, weekly, or monthly basis to own that property because the rent's covering all the expenses. And on top of that, the property's going up in value as time goes on. So as year 10 rolls around, a few things have happened. The property has gone from $300,000 to $600,000. You've never paid any of your own money to own the property, apart from the initial $50,000 you put on, and the the loan amount or the loan balance that you started with, which may have been say $270,000 if you put $30,000 in as a deposit and $20,000 as closing cost, is now closer to $200,000 because you've been paying down the loan, or not you, but the tenant, the rental income that it's been generating because it's a cash flowing asset that you've just bought. It's just a far better position. Additionally, the rent has gone up on that property, so it may have started at $450 a week rent, but now after 10 years the rent's $700, for example. So just a far better position. So in year 10, you effectively have a net worth position of, let's call it 600,000 minus 200,000, $400,000. You also have a cash flow position from the positive cash flow that the rental property is getting of about $200 per week. Happy days, okay? That is why it's far better to buy investment properties than it is to buy luxury, depreciable items like a car. Now, if you have money to spend, I would suggest buying assets because you can scale. Buying appreciating assets is a scalable wealth creation vehicle. Buying depreciating assets is not. Okay, so I'm just gonna add a little bit more to this, the end of this video. The fact that the property is going up in price means you can use that growth to scale your portfolio. You can buy a second, third, fourth property, and all these properties, as you scale your portfolio, are growing exponentially, and you are going to eventually get to the point where you can retire and you can, instead of buying one Land Cruiser, you can buy 10 and you can buy them cash. But by that time that you get there, you probably realize that there's far better things to spend your money on than depreciating assets like Land Cruisers. Hope this video was helpful, and see you guys next time. Bye.